updating over here. Place that guy. Minutes. At some point, I have to condense this process.
And we are live. Welcome to Live Before Lock Sunday, January 3rd. I have no concept of the date at this point. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Terry McBride. We are here to break it all down. Coming on the news that Luka Doncic is now doubtful for tonight. I was not prepped for that. Unfortunately, that news broke at the moment that we were going live, so we will be talking about that in a little bit. We're going to go through each game since we haven't really had that for today. So let's just start here. Terry, what's up?
What's going on, man? How you doing? I'm with you on the not really knowing the date or anything like that. I only knew it was Sunday because football was on all day today. But yeah, enjoyed the football slate and been diving into this and scrambling to update the Luka news just like you. We were talking about some of those minutes just before we came on, so should be fun to dig into this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I just realized that I never changed the betting line for that game, so I'm just going to leave it now and not care. But we're going to have a lot to talk about. Again, we will dig into the Luka piece of this a little bit further into the show. Maybe we get a little bit more news as we get going. So let's just start right now. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. We've already got north of 600 people and 100 likes. You guys are doing a fantastic job of appeasing me. So I appreciate that. We'll touch on promos and giveaways and all that good stuff. The schedule for the rest of the night, NFL Live Before Lock, coming up at 7:20 p.m. Eastern time. But for now, let's just take a lap through every single game that we've got going on tonight. We'll start here. Los Angeles Lakers, Memphis Grizzlies. Grizzlies, pretty big underdogs at home. We know that Grayson Allen is going to be in the lineup. DeAnthony Melton also active. I'm going to throw it to you in a pretty holistic sense. What stands out to you most from Lakers and Grizzlies?
So I think on the Lakers side of things, I know you just kind of started on the Memphis side, but on the Lakers, we get Kuzma in the starting lineup, which is a little bit interesting. Probably toss him a couple extra minutes. The usage comes down slightly. I ran it with him playing alongside AD and LeBron, and it comes down slightly, but it's still like 18-ish%. So a decent amount of usage. If he's getting run, I think he's okay in there. He's a little bit playable, getting around like level ownership as compared to his appearances in the optimal and his boom bust. So he's fine, but I think that was a key piece of news for the Lakers. We're still waiting. LeBron had a Q tag. I expect him to go. I think you had him in as well.
Yes.
So I'd be surprised. Yeah, so I'll be surprised if that one changes. Interesting leverage score on LeBron on FanDuel, also on DraftKings. So he's kind of in play for me over there if he goes. The other AD, the other star on the team, a little bit the opposite direction. No real news attached to him. And then on the Memphis side, you mentioned we've got Melton coming in. I've only got him like 18, 20 minutes, something like that. So not really making a huge impact other than he's going to draw some probably minutes and usage away from like a Tyus Jones, taking the value of him down. We're getting Brandon Clark starting alongside Valanciunas again. I think both of those guys are interesting tonight on both sides. So there's a decent amount in play in this game for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty light on the Memphis side. We have Brandon Clark picking up ownership, Joe Val picking up ownership, Kyle Anderson, Dylan Brooks. I'm under the field on pretty much all of these guys. I think the salaries have come up a little bit. They're starting to get some bodies back. I'm a little nervous about the spot too. Not really a great look for the Grizzlies going up against the Lakers. I think they match up pretty well there. Like of all the matchups that can exist, this one's a pretty good one for someone like Marc Gasol to defend Joe Val. And after that, it kind of all just fits into play. It's not like Brandon Clark's in a good spot playing power forward against Anthony Davis either. I do like the Lakers a little bit. Seems like they're getting a little slept on, or at least they were. So I'm okay getting to some AD. I was a little bit above the field prior on my previous crunches. Kuzma's fine. I don't have much interest in THT. LeBron probably going underrepresented. I'm relatively indifferent on him at 10-4 on FanDuel. That's not my favorite price tag in the world. I thought I would get to this game a little bit more than I am, but I don't get the sense that I'm going to have a ton of exposure to it. And particularly on the Memphis side where I'm a little nervous to get there.
Yeah, I think out of those plays, you know, you mentioned I think I'll be at most like level ownership. I might be leveraged up a little bit on LeBron on FanDuel. Yeah. I do like the the appearances in the optimal compared to where he's getting owned. but that's probably really the only spot. I don't think, Marc Gasol is cheap, and might get some minutes like you mentioned, but what's he going to put up for us is, around a fantasy point per minute if we're lucky, and getting about 20 minutes, 21, 22. So not really in love with that. I think maybe Wes Matthews picks up a couple extra minutes with KCP not playing, but again, not really something that I think is going to render itself relevant in our projections or in our results here. Harrell's been getting like kind of a relevant run. He's getting 26-ish minutes, but not really producing much with him. So again, another guy who's like, he's on the board, but he's not really getting into any of my lineup there.
Looks like Trey Burke at the top of the ownership on DraftKings now. That's something. Not that I'm surprised by it or anything, but good to know, I guess. I'm loading everything up now, getting it in front of me just to make sure I don't see anything too crazy. Yeah, Dylan Brooks is pulling a little bit more ownership than I was actually expecting. It's come down a little bit on FanDuel, kind of still high on DraftKings where he's 6,300. I'm not sure I'm there for it. AD's ownership up a little bit.
I was higher on Brooks earlier in the day before I was aware that Melton was definitely going to be back, and before they announced Grayson Allen was going to be back. I think there's a lot to kind of go around there amongst a bunch of mediocre guards. So it kind of took the gleam off of Brooks a little bit for me, and a little bit in Alex's numbers too.
All right, let's keep this one moving because we do have a couple games. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more to touch on. So I'd like to plow through it as quick as we can for the people. Good. Washington Wizards, Brooklyn Nets. In Brooklyn, Nets are the favorites here. Wizards should be at full strength. Brooklyn looks to be at full strength for guys that can actually play right now. On the Washington side, Russell Westbrook on FanDuel picking up a little bit of love. A similar story on DraftKings. I'm kind of light on Westbrook, particularly on FanDuel where he's 11K. I feel like he's a little overpriced. We'll see if this changes on my updated Sims. I was just getting to a lot more Luka at a comparable price tag. That ship has now sailed. But the guy that I like the most in this game is Thomas Bryant, 5,800 on FanDuel. He's 6,600 on DraftKings. I don't love that as much. He's going to play 30 minutes so long as he doesn't get into any foul trouble, but I'm not super worried about anything on the Brooklyn side for Thomas Bryant himself. It's not DeAndre Jordan. It's certainly not Jared Allen. So I like getting to Thomas Bryant from the Washington side. Kevin Durant. I don't really have like a take there. Similar story for Kyrie. Like these are guys that are going to work into your lineups one way or the other if you have the value. I don't get the sense that I'm going to have much else coming out of Brooklyn. Where do you stand, whether it's Wizards or Nets?
Brian Cole's interesting. I'm taking a look at him. He's getting on FanDuel. He's getting a little bit more ownership than he was appearing in the optimal. Just going by the old boom bust tool here, so it's a little bit negative leverage, but it's not something where at 5,800 we're going to have to worry about it. It's easy to leverage up on and get over the field if you like that one. Coming up with a decent boom score and a 20% boom on the center spot. So don't dislike that call for a value center. I think he's definitely in play there. I'm curious to see where I'm going to get to Russ as well. I was getting a lot more Luka also. So I think he might slide into that spot. I think Beal could be interesting as another guy who will probably end up around the field, get him where he comes into my lineups and be pretty happy about it. The production's certainly there. 1.31 fantasy FanDuel points per minute this year. So a lot of production and getting a lot of usage. I looked at the last game where Westbrook was in the lineup, and Beal actually had more usage. Beal was 32.9% usage that game. Russ was only 27.4%. So he's getting plenty of looks with while playing alongside Russ, scoring a ton of points and putting the ball in the hole. So I don't really have an issue getting to him. Guys like Rui Hachimura back in play is on the board, but not really interesting for me.
I'm pretty light on Rui. Just looking at my projection relative to Alex makes me a tad nervous, but at the same time, he's 5K on FanDuel. So if he has an outlier game, like he just has it, I don't think that I would have him one way or the other. I like the Bradley Beal call. Falls in the same sort of bucket as Durant and Irving for me. I think they're all like sort of properly priced. They're all like 1.2 to 1.25 fantasy point per minute guys. And on the right night, they have the ability to have a ceiling game. They all seem like Durant's picking up more ownership than I expected, but Beal for 9,800 at 6.5% ownership, that feels like it's slipping through the cracks a little bit.
Yeah, I like that one. And on the Nets side of things, I was actually getting a lot of Kyrie earlier as well, alongside that Luka ownership. So I'm curious where that goes because he's getting a lot of ownership compared to how much he's appearing in the optimal, specifically on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's a little bit more leveled out, but still a little bit over-owned, just compared to the optimal. He's got a great projection, decent boom score. So I don't mind getting to a fair amount of them, but I'm curious as to why I was getting as much as I was with that negative leverage score that we've got on him. So something I'm going to look at as we go through the show and see if I can level that out a little bit. And it might come down naturally with some of the Westbrook and the way things shift around as we go through this.
I don't think he had a negative leverage score before the Luka news. I was getting to some Kyrie as well. His ownership was a little bit lower than I thought. He was actually someone that I wrote down to bump up manually in my crunches. Now it looks like he's pulling a little bit more ownership. That's what happens when you pull out a guy that was getting roughly 20% at 11K. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I think that might be the issue because I saw it earlier too. And then I just saw his ownership now. And I was like, well, I don't need him at all.
Yeah, cross him off then. Where are you on Levert?
Perfect.
I'm like right with Alex, basically.
I want to just go back and have us talk a little bit about the major league quote that you just slipped in there. Perfect timing for it. Where am I on Levert? He's like a 5% guy to me. It doesn't appear that he's like getting the extra time that I fully expected him to get once Dinwiddie went out. I haven't projected for 26 minutes. I haven't projected for 30 fantasy points. I haven't projected at the exact same rate that Alex has, at least on FanDuel. And at that point, he's like a guy that exists at 6,500. I assume I'll have like 5 to 10% of him, and that'll do it. This is a sneaky good spot for him because Washington's defense is putrid. So maybe Levert just cooks on the bench unit, but
yeah,
his upside is limited if he's not getting additional run.
Right. And if he could crack that 30-minute mark, or more importantly, even the last time out when he was coming off the bench, he only got 19.7% usage. So it's not like he was like, burning it up as the, main focal point of that second unit, like we expect him to do. And like the coaches, basically said he wants him to do. So I was curious about that. I'm also like right with Alex. My projection's 30.26 and Alex's 30.1. So we're like dead on even on that guy. So I think we're all pretty much in agreement. If he comes into some of my lineups, I won't be too upset about it, but I'm not going to be much over the fields. What are they, around 3%? Yeah. If I had 10%, it would be probably high, but I wouldn't be too upset about it.
Anything else in Wizards Nets?
Anything special that you're doing with the Jared Allen, DeAndre Jordan? I just kind of let those guys fly at around even minutes and let it settle that way. And I typically don't get to too much of either one of them. Neither one looks overly good to me tonight or really stands out. I think they, share enough of the minutes that it kind of takes away from both of them. Doesn't look like in Alex's numbers either one of them shines. Curious if you're getting anything different.
Same scenario. Minutes are muted. Projection is muted. There's no ownership, and I don't really get to any of them, so it makes it pretty easy to just avoid them wholesale.
Injury or a trade, one of those guys I think gets more interesting night after night.
Yeah, I assume. Well, if it's injury, I was going to say Jared Allen's the trade piece here. DeAndre Jordan would have to be the injury piece of that one because they're not trading DeAndre Jordan. Denver Nuggets, Minnesota Timberwolves. Nuggets pretty sizable favorites in Minnesota. This Wolves team is pretty bad, especially without Karl Anthony Towns, considering he is on a completely different level than the rest of this team. But anyway, let's talk a little Denver. Jokic, pretty aggressive chalk at center on both sites. I think that's pretty reasonable. He's clearly the highest profile center today. So if you're getting to him, I think it makes some sense. I want to talk about Will Barton's ownership. I feel like it's oddly high.
Me too.
I'm not so sure I like it that high. I am light on Will Barton just in general, I believe, but I don't know. Like he seems wildly overowned.
I'm glad you brought it up because he was a guy that was coming up for me a lot in crunches. I wasn't entirely sure why. I took a look at where the public ownership was and made a note to, all right, I've got to get in there and make sure that I'm not getting as much of Will Barton as it looks like I might. That was just in like raw crunches before I did any filtering. So hopefully my process would just catch that naturally. But yeah, I am terrified of that. 0.78 FanDuel points per minute so far this year. Very small sample, but $5,000 player. Even when he was kind of right last year, he was only a 0.95 FanDuel points per minute guy. So just not somebody I rely on a lot and not somebody I love getting to. 41.8% boom score is good. 23.4% appearances in the optimal lineup on FanDuel. 23% boom on DK with a 23% appearances in the optimal, but he's overowned on both sites. I think we can spend that money for a similar player in a much, much better spot.
Breaking news, LaMarcus Aldridge is out. So the sim has been muted immediately to go and fix whatever's happening. Basically, bump up your Jake Puddle to, 26 to 28 minutes. Give Drew Eubanks a couple additional minutes. And that kind of just accounts for everything you need. I don't think I'm missing anything there. We're going to break down the Spurs shortly, but I did want to just let everybody know, if you're building any lineups, Aldridge is out tonight. And I appreciate that you are on the same side of this Will Barton journey. Let's see what else we have coming in here from an ownership standpoint. Millsap looks fine. Jamal Murray looks fine. I don't have any issues with those guys picking up any love. Will Barton is the real weird one. And then the Wolves are getting just super owned on FanDuel. Naz Reid at 30%, Russell at 23%. Also Russell picking up a little bit of love on DK as well. I'm going to end up light on some of these Minnesota guys. I assume one of them pops off, but I just really don't like this team. I don't really know where they go. They've been stretching out the rotation. What are you doing with the Wolves?
Wishing I wasn't going to be playing probably too many of some of these key guys. Russell was a guy that was coming up a lot for me. I wrote him up in my optimal lineups. Look at the boom bust tool earlier in the day. He still looks, somewhat appealing to me. Decent projection, good boom score on both sides. Slightly positive leverage. It's come down a little bit from where it was earlier, and I expect it'll probably level out basically. I was hoping he would be a bit sneaky tonight. Maybe people not happy with the 25 minutes he got the last game, 14-4-3 line that he put up. 5 turnovers, 6 of 16 shooting, 2 of 7 from 3. Ugly game that burned a lot of people. Ricky Rubio right alongside him in that one. So I was hoping that people would get off of Russell, but it doesn't seem like they are. I think I'll probably still have him, but I'm not happy about it. Let's just work his way in there. I think Anthony Edwards could maybe be interesting. 5,100 on FanDuel, 5,200 over on DK. Throwing a little bit of a percentage of being in the optimal, a dart throw for GPP play. If he gets to like 30 minutes, he's getting some usage. He's become a bit of a feature in that offense. Last time out, he was 26 and a half minutes. 17, 3 and 2, but he was only 7 of 16 from the field, but only 2 of 8 from 3. A couple more of those threes go down. His score goes up to a pretty nice little ceiling score in that game. So I think he's in play. Wouldn't go haywire with it, but definitely think he's on the board. Wouldn't want to touch Ricky Rubio, I don't think. Just scared of him at this point. Not very productive. Not really. Naz Reid, I guess, is in play. I guess was pretty deliberate there. Big time negative leverage score on FanDuel. Not somebody I'd be very excited about. I'll probably end up a little bit below the field on him.
Yeah, he was the guy that I was getting like 10 to 15% of on my previous run. I just thought there were guys around him that looked just as good. Russell's the guy that scares me the most here because he's a guy that I'm getting almost none of. And at the very least, he has the profile of someone that could really make that a problem. I'm fine with it. I don't like rooting for him, so I would rather just fade him. But he certainly has the pedigree to make me hate myself for it. Ugh. I just don't like this Minnesota team.
It sounds like I'm going to be writing a guy I hate in D'Angelo Russell, and you're going to have a lot of Kelly Oubre that you hate on your side of things that I'm not going to have. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's absolutely happening.
That. If they were playing like that.
Yeah, I would certainly well, if I had to pick one of the two from a fantasy sense and I just needed more points, I would certainly rather have D'Angelo Russell. That's for sure. Yeah, it's not fun. Anything else from this game?
Millsap was coming up for me earlier. It looks like he'll probably level out when I run the next batch here, just given how he's kind of leveled off in Alex's numbers and what our ownership looks like. Sure. Were you getting him at all? Decent price, but the production is 0.73 FanDuel points per minute so far this year. Just seems like a guy who's kind of slowed down and not really a focal point of that offense, but he's going to get some run and the price is right.
Yeah, I had about 10% before. Nothing too crazy. I think he was pretty much properly owned, and he was just filling out as, like the 7th or 8th best power forward you could find, which makes sense. Sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, and at that price, you could easily pay it off. So.
Absolutely. All right, guys, how many people we have in here now? Let's see. Ooh, 1,800. Look at that. 243 likes. So let's do this. Hit that thumbs up, first and foremost. Aiden, you had a super chat. I want to hit on this quickly, and then we can move on to some promos and some giveaways. Rank these 4: Westbrook, Beal, Irving, KD. I think that I would rank them in reverse order. KD, Irving, Beal, Westbrook.
I would say Beal, Irving, KD, Westbrook.
Yeah, Westbrook's last for me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I don't have a really strong lean between those other three guys.
Yeah, they were all guys that I'd be happy to get to in my lineups and were coming up for me. So happy to put them kind of side by side. But I think the order that I set them, I roll them off there is about where I'd be.
Okay, guys, we have 2 promos going on right now. You guys do what you want. Either one of them can work for you. You could use the promo code 2021, 2021. You can get 21 days of Awesemo Plus for just $20 when you use that promo code. You get projections and ownership and premium Slack and the lineup builder, all that good stuff. If you just want to get a taste, that's the way you do it. Promo code 2021. Or if you want to dive into the deep end, use the promo code HAPPY when you check out. Get 20% off an Awesemo yearly platinum pass. You get everything, but you also get it for 365 days. We don't normally do massive sales on our yearly packages. So if you are interested in grabbing it for a year, this is going to be one of the better times to do it. That's going to be one of the biggest discounts we will run for the year. So check that out. Either 2021 or HAPPY. Use your discretion, whichever direction you want to go. Or if you want to just hope you get lucky, go to Awesemo_com on Twitter. Check out the pinned tweet. All you have to do is follow the instructions there. Predict who's going to have more passing yards, Jalen Hurts or Alex Smith tonight in Sunday Night Football, the final game of the NFL regular season. But follow the instructions there. 2 random winners will be selected. You get a free month of Awesemo Plus. So maybe that's the direction you want to go, whether it's trying to win something for free, getting 21 days, or just buying out the year. We're giving you plenty of options. So go ahead, check everything out that I just went through. And thank you for all those likes, 378. I love it.
Yo.
All right, well, this one's about to get a little different. So Utah Jazz, San Antonio Spurs. 10 minutes ago, we got the news that we are not going to have LaMarcus Aldridge tonight. So let's start on the San Antonio side, if you are ready to talk about it. I think Jake Puddle is the best play coming out of San Antonio. I like a little bit of Keldon Johnson. If we're talking DraftKings, $7,500 DeMar DeRozan looks pretty good. I'll probably just have too much Jake Puddle on FanDuel. I would get to DeMar on DraftKings. I would get to Lonnie Walker a little bit on DraftKings as well. 4,200. I think that value seems fine. What do you want to do with the Spurs now that Aldridge is out? 3rd straight game.
Yeah, it's probably going to be the Puddle story again. This is about as excited as I am about it. I don't know that I've ever made money with him. I've not been there on nights where he's managed to get there, and I've just gotten burnt like every time by the guy. But I think it makes sense. We got to go back to him. Alex has him for 26 minutes. I plugged him in for 28 after the change, and obviously the numbers are there. The ownership probably hasn't caught up in this most recent one. It's still only 0.1% owned, so I expect that to change dramatically. His appearances in the optimal will probably change as well alongside that. He's going to be in play, though. It makes sense to get to him. Look at the rest of the guys. I think, I never mind getting to Murray and DeRozan. They're both, reasonable point per minute type producers. So at the price, don't really hate it. Probably both sides, actually, it's not terrible. Probably preferred on DraftKings, though, because those boom scores on DraftKings relative to other boom scores are a decent amount higher than what they are on FanDuel. Getting a little bit of ownership, but nothing I would be overly scared of. DDR a little bit more than Murray. Both those guys didn't play for me, though. Maybe a little Lonnie, like I said. Some Keldon. Reasonable. Not sure whether that'll change, but reasonable leverage score on Keldon on FanDuel right now. Drawing about even on DraftKings, but not bad on FanDuel. Guy I'm getting a decent projection on, 5,800. I think he could pay that off. He's been producing.
He's a guy that I had my eye on prior to the news. We'll see if that brings his ownership up at all, but he was one of the guys that was coming up as a bit under-owned. On the Jazz side, on FanDuel, I don't really care all that much. Like it's like 6 guys that are all like 10%ers, and you hope that you get one of them right. On the DraftKings side, though, Donovan Mitchell is 7,100. Rudy Gobert is 7,200. Both of those guys were projected for 20% ownership. The Mitchell one I totally get. The Gobert one feels a little higher than it should be. I'm curious how you feel about the Jazz side, and particularly Mitchell and Gobert.
Yeah, I think they were less on my radar just because mostly focused on FanDuel as usual, and they basically look. I don't want to say out of play completely for a guy like Gobert on a singular center site at 7,800, but he's getting ownership. He's not popping up all that much for me or for Alex in the optimal there. On DK, looks like a bit of a different story, like you were saying. A lot more appearances in the optimal, getting some ownership though for Rudy over there. So a place where if you're playing him as a second center, trying to get different with building in multiple centers into a lineup, something like that, I think I like to play a little bit more than just running him out there on his own at center. But I think he's definitely in play and somebody I'd probably be around the field on over on DK.
Yeah, the DK one seems totally fine. Mitchell for 7,100, that just feels incorrect, but we'll see where that totally ends up.
There's upside for sure in that price for him, and he's carrying a decent boom score because of it. So I think Alex sees it there, and decent raw, just median projection. Not getting like over the top ownership either. It's basically, for all intents and purposes, it's level with how much we expect him to be in the optimal. So yeah, I like that play over there.
Anything else, Jazz Spurs?
What are we doing with Mike Conley? I was getting to a little bit of him. He's been producing like crazy, shooting like crazy. I don't love it. I'm not excited about it, but only 6,600 on FanDuel. I think he's still kind of in play over there. 6,900 on DK, a little bit less and a little bit less relevant, I think. But at the point guard spot on FanDuel, I was getting to some of them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with a little bit of Mike Conley on FanDuel. I had him going a little bit under owned. So we had his ownership at 9%. I think getting into like the 18% range is pretty reasonable for him. Nothing, I don't want to go too crazy because there are some other point guards that I like, but I do think he's going a bit underrepresented.
Yeah, and a guy's, obviously getting minutes and pulling a ton of usage. Last time out, he was 30.8% usage. He took 20 shots. He was 11 for 20 from the field, 7 and 14 from three. So that's really what supported a lot of his line. He scored 33 real life points on 32-7-1 line. So a lot of that was supported by shooting, but did pick up some assists. So, typical point guard play. I think he's got that in him. Again, I don't know that he runs it back like that tonight, but I think for the money, I think he can still give us a decent score with the upside.
Anything else, Jazz Spurs?
I think that's probably it for this game.
All right, buckle up. This is one we really need to talk about. Mavs, Bulls. I almost said Bears, but that season's over. So big news starting off this show. Luka Doncic is doubtful, so we need to assume that he is not playing. Trey Burke looks to be picking up the large majority of the ownership on DraftKings. Looks to be relatively spread out between Josh Richardson, Trey Burke, and Tim Hardaway on FanDuel. So I'm just going to throw it to you now. What do you like coming out of Dallas without Luka?
Boy, I think it's Timmy Hardaway and Josh Richardson, kind of like we were saying before the show. I think those guys are going to soak up a fair amount of the shots that Luka would be taking. And they're both notorious chuckers, guys who need basically to score and to have the ball go through the rim to put up their points. But I think they're both going to be in play based on that. So far this season, both well under a fantasy point per minute. But the prices kind of reflect that. 5,300 for Timmy is in play. 4,800 for Josh Richardson is in play on FanDuel. 58 and 5,000 on DK. So I think they're both in play. They're getting slightly negative leverage on FanDuel, getting a lot more attention on DraftKings right now. But the boom scores are there. The projections are there. So I think they'd probably be level with the field, or maybe even decide to swallow some chalk and leverage up on one of those guys. I wouldn't necessarily want to play them both together. I would think it would be a choice between the two. And then, just spreading out from there, of course, we've got the Trey Burke issue to discuss. Gigantic boom score, 65% boom rate on FanDuel at 3,700, 3,400 over on DK. Again, a massive boom score, drawing a ton of ownership on both sites, but getting into the optimal a heck of a lot. So very interesting play there. I think Jalen Brunson maybe grabs some of the shreds of those minutes as well, and could put up, if he gets 26 minutes, he's slightly over a point per minute kind of a guy, a fantasy point per minute kind of a guy. So could be a little bit sneaky on FanDuel, it looks like, and it looks like he's getting a lot of attention on DK at 3,300.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting to a bunch of Jalen Brunson if his ownership is low. Did we get an ownership update, by the way?
I haven't seen it yet. If we did,
2 minutes ago.
Perfect.
Shazam. Let's go ahead and get that loaded in here so I can actually figure out what's going on. Jalen Brunson, chalk on DK, 50%. Trey Burke, second at 39.
Jeez.
Yeah, that happened.
I don't trust either of those guys.
No. So I think I prefer Brunson to Burke, but it's close. Ultimately, I think that I just end up with a ton of this team. Brunson, Richardson, Burke, Hardaway. I think Dwight Powell's going to go under-owned a little bit. I think Dorian Finney-Smith might end up going a little bit under-owned. Oh, God, I'm burping. That's not ideal, but I've been drinking a lot of drinks today to try and keep myself awake. So a lot of caffeine, a lot of bubbles.
Yeah, I was crunching those football lineups since like 4 o'clock this morning when I talked to you at like 6 and up through it, crunching that coffee. So I'm with you.
Do you prefer Brunson or Burke?
Probably Brunson, just because I think he's the better player. Just in a total vacuum, I don't love getting to either of those guys with that much ownership on them, like the numbers you just read off on DK. I'm just updating some of my stuff here for FanDuel, but I'll be there just because process will dictate that I'm there probably, but I'm not wild about it at those ownership numbers by any means.
Yeah, I just finished off running the sim. Brunson popping up quite a bit. Trey Burke a little bit less so. I probably have Brunson a little bit higher than I should. Burke a little bit less so than I should. I think those guys kind of have to be pretty similar right now. But either way, they look like fantastic value and probably the best value plays on the slate. And then there's Chicago, pretty heavily owned on both sites. Otto Porter north of 30%, Zach LaVine in the 20s on both sites, Kobe White in the teens, Thad Young still getting some love. I like Wendell Carter quite a bit on FanDuel. He's 5,500, not getting any ownership. One of my favorite like sneaky plays of the day. Do you want to get to the Bulls, particularly now that this game is going to look very different without Luka?
Yeah, I think the game, kind of comes back into the possibility that Chicago might at least hang in here and put up a decent game and a decent score. So I was getting a massive amount of Otto. That was kind of my counter to your Kelly Oubre ownership, I think, at the small forward spot on FanDuel. And it looks like the field is right there. So that was pre-sort again. That's just what was coming up raw in Cruncher. I am hoping I don't get near the field. That's a player that I don't trust. We saw him go pop the other day. I'm pretty sure with fairly similar popularity. He was in a lot of my lineups that day, and he went 22 minutes, 9 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, and a steal on 3 of 11, 1 for 3 from 3. So, is he getting 30 minutes and producing a heck of a lot more than that? He can. He's certainly capable of doing that. I just don't know that he's there. He certainly hasn't shown it to us very much this year. He does have a 1.10, so I guess maybe I missed a game where he produced a little bit. I'm not in love with the play.
I have way too much of this Bulls team, dude. Otto Porter, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, and Thad Young all showed up in the optimal north of 20% for me. Thad Young is my problem. I'll put it out there now. Thad Young is going to be a real problem for me.
He's been for me the last few times. It looks like what we've got in the latest boom bust might level that out. Hopefully in my process. He's a guy I was getting a lot of the other day. I think I'm going to end up with a lot of Wendell Carter like you. I think I'm going to end up with a lot of Kobe White just because I have been pretty much all season. And I'm hoping to get to some LaVine. I think out of all these guys, obviously the biggest upside for him, going to get the most run, and be the primary scorer for this team. 1.11 FanDuel points per minute so far this year. If he gets 35-ish minutes, I think that's in play. He's not sneaky by any means, but I'd like to be around the field, maybe a little higher on LaVine.
Okay. Anything else from Dallas and Chicago?
I think we hit the high points there until they announced that Luka's in.
Yeah, I think so too. And we'll have plenty of time to answer questions and stuff. We only have 2 more games to go, so we'll be able to dedicate like the final 15 minutes. I just need to hit on the schedule, which is easy. 7:20 p.m. Eastern time. NFL Live before lock. Washington football team, Philadelphia Eagles. Emac and Kyle breaking it all down. At least I think it's Emac and Kyle. I'm honestly just guessing, but we'll just go with it. Emac and Kyle. We're going with it. Live before lock. They'll take you all the way up until 8:20, the final regular season game of the NFL season. Go football team. What a terrible
Eagles.
Division.
Go Eagles. I can't believe I'm saying it, but if the Eagles win, my pathetic Giants make the playoffs. So
no, they all deserve to go home. So I'm not proud of any of them.
No, yeah, none of them should be in there. They should toss it to a much better team who was it? It was somebody was like 10-6 and not going to make the playoffs after today, and probably deserves. Oh, Miami deserves it a hell of a lot more. Obviously, an AFC team, but
Sure.
just pathetic that the Giants can get in like that.
Alrighty, 2 more games to go. Clippers and Suns. Suns slight dogs at home. On the Clippers side, Paul George getting a little love on FanDuel. Kawhi getting a little tiny bit of love on DraftKings, but it doesn't seem like the Clippers look good on either site. Paul George, definitely the guy that I like the most. That would be on FanDuel as well, 8K. But all things considered, like the Clippers seem like really uninteresting. The only thing that's less interesting than the Clippers might just be the Suns.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I'll probably have a fair amount of Paul George as well. Looks like he went a little bit negative on the leverage score, but nothing tragic there. And he's getting a reasonable optimal lineup percentage and a decent boom score. A guy that I've just been getting to a lot at the price they've had him at. Even the other day when Kawhi ended up playing, I left him in. I had a pretty big share of Paul George. And he ended up pretty much paying it off. I'm just jumping over to that game. There was a bit of an outlier in that performance. I think he had 7 steals, if I'm remembering it correctly. Yeah, he was 25, 8, and 4, but he had 7 stocks. 6 of 22 shooting, 5 of 13 from 3. If he's going to go out there and put up a night like that again, I'd be in love with having him. I think we can take down the steals and the blocks a little bit and still get a nice game out of him. So I'll have a good amount of Paul George. If Kawhi sneaks into some of my lineups, I definitely don't hate it. Love having star players, so I don't mind that. Wouldn't be getting too much of Ibaka. Don't think like Beverly's interesting. Lou Will is a disappointment so far this year. Only 0.88 FanDuel points per minute, despite getting some run. Just wasn't getting usage, oddly. He was 15.5% last time out. 24 minutes, only took 8 shots and no threes. That doesn't sound like a Lou Williams game. So I'm wondering what's up with him, but certainly won't be getting to any of him tonight. And I wasn't really getting to any of the Suns on the last run, and I don't see anything that really would change it. A guy like Jay Crowder is a guy I usually like to get to, non-scoring dependent kind of a guy who can do it a bunch of different ways, and he's not expensive at all, only 4,600. I think he's a guy we talked about last weekend. Positive leverage score, so maybe a guy I'll look at on FanDuel and be happy if he trickles into some of my lineups. That said, he hasn't really been lighting the world on fire so far this year. So going to have to ride the history there rather than the recent performance.
This will be my least exposed game. Only Paul George is north of 10% in my sim of being in the optimal on FanDuel. I'm just not going to be having much of it. And I think that we can move it straight to Blazers Warriors unless you have anything else.
No, I think we got everybody that was relevant to me.
All righty. Portland Trail Blazers, Golden State Warriors, Blazers, bit of a favorite in Golden State. Now, this is a team I like quite a bit, although there is some ownership there. Derek Jones Jr., Robert Covington, Nurkic, Lillard, McCollum. McCollum not picking up much ownership because he's 8,800 on FanDuel. I still like him at that price tag, which is uncomfortable to me in a big way, but I love Dame. Comes to play against Golden State. Warriors team terrible defensively. I want a ton of Dame. I want some CJ. I want a bunch of Robert Covington. I want some Derek Jones Jr. I just want Portland in general. How do you feel about the Blazers?
Yeah, I think I'll be getting to all of those guys. This is a run back of the game we saw the other day. Portland won 123-98. 62 combined points for Lillard and CJ. So they're just basically running that back. CJ was 28, 1, 4, and 3 on 11 of 21. Dame was 34, 4, 8, and 1, also on 11 of 21. Nice and tidy with the usage there. CJ 4 of 11 from 3, Dame 6 of 10. That's really the story of this team. I mean, they're going to go as the scoring goes for those two guys. Carmelo was getting a little bit of attention, put up 18 points, grabbed a couple boards. Nothing exciting from Carmelo, only 24 minutes is like the sixth man. Derek Jones grabbed a little bit of his value score the other day, but he had 5 steals. So again, maybe not repeatable, but he only put up 8 real life points and pulled down 8 rebounds. So it's kind of a wacky game for him. 3 of 7 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. So not really his prototypical game. So I think we see him just go back to, being more the player that we expect him to be and probably put up a better score than that. Nurk was popular and got into foul trouble. He came out, he was had 5 fouls in the game. His 4th foul came really early in the 3rd quarter, and then he sat till the beginning of the 4th and picked up his 5th foul like right away. From what I saw in the I didn't watch this game, but from what I saw in the notes, and then he just basically sat until he came back in for like another 2-minute stretch in the 4th quarter, and then came back out. So He only got 17 minutes. I think he's much more in play. Obviously, if he's getting his full run at 27, 28, 30 minutes, definitely a center that I can get to on both sides.
I need to bump up my Trey Burke. Oh boy, not even remotely close to where I need him to be right now, given the current makeup of this slate. I have a lot of Jalen Brunson, which is not a problem, but I have more than I'd like. If he's really 28% home, though, I guess I don't mind all that much. Oh no, what just crashed? Everything? Did everything crash? Okay, we're back in business. Whew. That scared me a lot. a lot. Every single window went away. All of them. Not ever fun when you see that happen. Let's talk about the Golden State side. I think Kelly Oubre is mildly underowned on FanDuel. I don't have nearly as much now that there's more value out there. And then I don't have a ton of interest in Steph Curry, but that is just a spot that always will scare me because he doesn't count when it comes to he could have 10 threes in the first quarter. I know that's an exaggeration, but what are you trying to do with Golden State?
Yeah, I mean, is it that much of an exaggeration for Steph to just come out there and knock down 10 for 10 in the first quarter? But it could happen. Not. Yeah, it could certainly happen. But yeah, I think I'm going to be with you. I'm just about to run a new crunch and see how all this actually falls. So don't quote me on any of this or hold me to it, guys, when you talk about us not playing the plays that we're talking about. But I think I would probably be a little bit under. If I get him, I'm happy about it. He's a guy I always love to have. Don't think I want too much Andrew Wiggins. Looks like he's getting a little bit more ownership than he deserves tonight, and never a guy I'm excited about. My notes always have that reminder that he sucks. Draymond Green, probably not going to get enough run to really be relevant at 6,000 on FanDuel, 5,800 on DK. I don't think he's there yet, minutes-wise or production-wise. Wiseman, we saw the production came down a little bit last game. He's at 105 FanDuel points per minute, though. 24 minutes projection from Alex. He's in play. I don't love getting to him tonight. I don't necessarily think we need to take a value center on the singular center site tonight. But on DraftKings, where you can kind of move him around, he's a little bit interesting. He's not getting any attention. It doesn't appear a tremendous amount of time in the optimal, and you're paying $5,200 for him. But I think he's a movable piece on the DraftKings slate.
I'm in you're talking about the single center sites. I'm trying to walk back a little bit of Jokic. I kind of just want to be with the field and then load up on the guys that I like Puddle, Thomas Bryant, Wendell Carter. Those are the guys that I think are going a little underrepresented. Joval looking like a guy that I'm going to be fading pretty aggressively. So we'll see where we end up there. Also looks like I'm light on Naz Reid and I don't have to do anything to fix that. Got a lot of James Johnson on my last run. Didn't see that one coming. Probably should fix that.
Interesting. I wasn't expecting him to come up tonight.
Not like, it's 14%. He's projected for 3.5, but at the very least, it feels like I don't need 14% James Johnson. Although, it's who the hell knows what's going to happen on the Mavs tonight.
How many minutes do you have him in for?
Not a lot. 15.
Yeah, I think I had him at 14. Alex looks like he has him at 15.
Yeah, it's he's going bye-bye for sure. Not like total bye-bye, but like most of the way bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for these games? Anything else that you want to touch on for the slate in general that you think you might have missed?
I think we hit a lot of those. Let's just do I'll do a quick sort here by the most recent appearances for the optimal. So you mentioned Jokic. He is still sorting by the optimal on FanDuel. Still our top overall player, despite the price. So he's definitely in play. He's very interesting. The price is very difficult to get to, but he's got a justifiable boom score. Alex is getting him hitting that boom number a reliable amount of the time, and you're getting him a little bit less owned, a slightly positive leverage score still. So we'll see where it comes down, but I still don't mind being over the field on him. I don't know how wild I would go with it, to your point from before, and that's mostly price driven, but I don't mind being over the field on him.
Yeah, right now I have 36% on FanDuel, and then I'm going to like 19% Bryant, 19% Nurkic, 13% Wendell Carter, 11% Jake Puddle. That feels all about right to me. Some of the other guys that I'm getting a bunch of on FanDuel: Dame, Zach LaVine, Otto Porter, AD, Robert Covington. I think Anthony Davis is just sort of a function of that position. There's not really anything at power forward below him. Best I could tell, Draymond Green at 6K is like the closest guy in salary. I think now that we have this value in Trey Burke and we have this value in Jalen Brunson, that it's really easy to pay up somewhere else. And it looks like AD is going to be the guy that shows up most for me. Ownership is also there. He is the highest owned power forward, but I don't think I'm getting away from it. I'm pretty concentrated in ownership on AD, Robert Covington, and Thad Young at power forward, with a little bit of Brandon Clark coming in. Is there anybody you're getting to that's kind of like weird at the power forward spot?
So Clark, it sounds like I'm getting to a little bit more than you are. He's currently just crunch-wise the top-owned power forward coming up for me. A name that I wasn't expecting to see in here. I don't even know if, make sure that he's active, is Maxi Kleber. He's
active.
Okay, all right, good. I'm just pulling him up and seeing why I'm getting some of them in crunches. All right, I guess he's somewhat relevant on the slate. So he's popping up a little bit. I don't expect that I'll get a lot of them once I go through the sorting process. And then a guy I mentioned earlier when we were talking it through is Jay Crowder, getting about 14% of him across 500 lineups. It's not going to come up a significant amount of the time in the lineups that I sort to, but if I get him 5-6 times, I'd be pretty happy about it, I think.
That works. Brandon Clark is fourth for me, so I'm like basically neutral with the field. I'm not all that far away for you. I just have the other guys as under-owned, where I have Clark as properly owned, so he's not getting the same sort of boost, although I think that I am probably on a little bit of Thad Young Island. Not a place I don't want to be. He was
coming up. He's in that. He was the next man down from after Jay Crowder, and James Johnson's right there too. So you're not entirely alone, but I think you'll have more of them. It sounds like than I will.
I feel like I'm a little light on Tim Hardaway right now at 5,300 at the small forward spot. That's feeling a bit wrong to me.
I'm in the process of making a Timmy Hardaway, Josh Richardson group and not getting them together. I think that makes sense.
I wouldn't mind having them together. 4,800 and 5,300.
That's a good point.
So that's what? 10-1, 10-20. So you're looking for like 70 fantasy points between them together. I think that's feasible.
Yeah,
I wouldn't sweat that one too much. At least
over my numbers on what the target score on that would be for what I calculated it out earlier.
Yeah.
Jimmy and J Rich. Yeah, I had like 78.5, something like that they would need.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I guess I don't need to totally block it. All right. You talk me into it. I'll let it fly.
Well, if it sucks, I blame you.
We're talking about away at Josh Richardson. It's going to suck.
That's probably very true. Guys, we have 10 minutes to go until lock. We have just north of 2,000 people in here, 450 likes. I appreciate you tremendously. Hit that thumbs up. We're going to start taking some questions, some of them coming in from Premium Slack. Barton or Hardaway, FanDuel cash? Got to be Hardaway now, right?
I'm not a cash player, but I think it's Timmy. Yeah. I definitely think it's Timmy. I trust him more. I think there's a little bit more upside.
Carter Jr. or Nurkic in a FanDuel GPP?
If you've got the salary, I would probably just take Nurk. Those are wildly different plays.
Yeah.
Unless I'm misremembering.
Give me Carter. Depending on how chalky the rest of your lineup is. Like, I like Wendell Carter relative to his ownership, but I think Nurkic is a better play in a vacuum.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, it's not that different. It's $500 difference. So, yeah, I think I'll stand by where I was. If you can pay up for Nurk, I would probably do that. The ownership is about level, and you're getting a significantly higher boom score, significantly higher appearances in the optimal on FanDuel.
Let's see what else we've got coming in here. Porter or Carter, DK single entry?
Porter or Carter, DK single entry?
Yeah.
So talking Otto or Wendell?
I guess Otto or Wendell Carter?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking they're asking.
It's got to be Otto Porter.
Yeah, it's the only Otto I think in the league.
Actually, well, I probably have Wendell Carter projected better. If I assume this is going to be like a utility play, they clearly don't play the same position.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a utility play, only $200 difference on DK. You're getting Porter a little bit more in the optimal, like 3 times as much actually, and not getting over-owned over there. So is it a reasonable leverage score? I don't mind going to Porter if you can afford it and you're sticking him in the util spot there. You're getting a slight ownership advantage with going to Wendell Carter, but at under 10%, I don't know that it makes a gigantic difference. You'll probably be fairly unique either way.
Are you getting any Kawhi? It's just a name that I see that I'm not getting to.
I wasn't in that last run. I just did a quick little update here, and I'm doing a new crunch. So let me see if he's coming up at all in this as it runs. No, I mean like 3-4% as this one runs in the 250 range. So yeah, not getting much of it at all.
All righty.
Danny Advija from the Wizards.
He's the guy that I do get a lot. It's just not today. Although he is showing up as under-owned in that he doesn't have ownership, but not a spot I have a lot of.
He's popping into some of these crunches, and I wouldn't mind getting to him if nobody else is on him. I think he's produced. I think there's a role for him there. Even with Russ back on the court, I think he does enough aside from scoring that he's in play a little bit. So I wouldn't mind if he pops into some of these lineups.
Let's see. Ooh, I need to give LeBron a little bit of a boost here. No, not 28 fantasy points, LeBron. That's preposterous. If you scored 28 fantasy points tonight, I would be a very unhappy camper.
That would not be good for business.
No. Let's see what else. 3 Mavs in a lineup too many. No, not at all.
No, definitely not with all that value.
Westbrook or Jokic in a DK single entry?
Well, I can scream with everybody on it.
Yeah. Let's see. Westbrook is 10-2.
I think Westbrook's slightly just because he's left owned. They're 10-2, 10-6.
Yeah. Give me Jokic in that one if you're picking between the two.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't mind either play. I would save a little bit of money, save a little bit of ownership on Russ for me, but they're both right there.
A lot of Burke Brunson questions. I don't mind having them in the same lineup. I'm not entirely confident where these minutes are going to go and how it will all eventually break, but there's 3,700 together. And I assume we see north of 20 minutes from both of them. And I think that can be fine. I don't think that it'll be highly regretful if you have them both. Wouldn't be something that I would want to abuse, but because of the way that they're priced, what's that? 7,400, right? I mean, you're talking...
Yeah, you're not talking much.
57 combined from the two of them. Like, that is not problematic at all. And they could easily soar over that number. It's just, we don't know what they're going to be doing this year. It's different, especially with Porzingis out. Like, there's going to be shots to be had. I mean, we are losing a ton of usage with Luka being out of this game. I think I'm happy with most of my exposures. I'm heavier on Otto Porter than I want to be, but I don't really know what to do with that sort of information.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, unless you can somehow, funnel that to like all the way up to LeBron at the position, I think a lot of that is where some of that AD ownership that you mentioned is coming from, because I'm getting a lot of that too. And I think there's just so much value. He is the only spend up option at that position. You mentioned it earlier. The next most expensive guy is Draymond Green on FanDuel at 6,000. So it's like a 4,000 difference between the first most expensive guy and the second most. So I think that money is just funneling to that spot, and that's what we're seeing. So yeah, if we can do like some weird little tweak that would push LeBron up, AD down maybe a little bit, balance that out and spend the money that way, could be a way to get different, a little bit of an anti-optimizer kind of a play.
Robert Covington, a guy that I'm getting probably too much of, but at 5,200, I don't know what else to do at that position.
He's a guy
the answer is Brandon Clark.
He completely burnt me the other night, but he's usually a guy I don't mind getting to at all. I expect I'll have him. He was coming up for me before. So
who is your most owned player right now?
I'll be able to answer that better in about 2 minutes, I hope.
Fair enough.
It looks like
I understand.
I'm just pulling the crunch out of here real quick. And I was waiting for the 2 crunches to combine into one, which is why I was stalling for time there. I should be able to answer that as soon as Fantasy Cruncher catches up and actually closes this window for me. 1,000 lineup sitting in the other tab. Here we go. Overall, highest owned player on FanDuel in just crunching wise, it looks like AD and D'Angelo Russell and Russell Westbrook basically tied atop the board. The 3 of those guys across 1,000 lineups, all owned around 30 to 35% of the time. Not sure how that'll break out when I actually put it into the whole filtering process here.
No part of that is what I wanted to hear other than the AD part. I have very minimal amounts of Russell Westbrook. I have very minimal amounts of D'Angelo Russell. Damian Lillard is the guy. That's the guy that I'm hitching my wagon to tonight. 9,300 on FanDuel. That is my spot that is most exposed. And honestly, like, I don't mind that at all. That's one of those that I feel happy about.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he doesn't end up, once I flip this ranking here and actually see where I'm going to land across my my entries. I'll be surprised if I'm not getting some of them at least, because he's a guy that my model loves. I tend to get to him quite a bit. A lot of Timmy. Oh, geez. No, actually, not getting a ton of them. 15%. So
okay,
yeah, not pretty weak how I'm doing some of the ownership based on some of this. Might work our new leverage scores into this just in my sorting process here in the future.
I really wish I had a feel for this Dallas team, but I do not. Like, I've got a bunch of weird negative numbers for all of these guys, but I'm kind of just overriding it and hoping for the best. Like, I'm bringing Brunson and Trey Burke closer together. I'm bumping up Richardson. I'm bumping up Tim Hardaway because I think that makes the most sense. But I am not really comfortable with that game right now. I just know that I need to have exposure to it and hope that I can find that right combination. I'm just waiting for it to be like Dwight Powell. That's the guy that you really need.
Somebody we barely touched on, of course. And that's usually how these things roll. I'm just putting some lineups in here. I am going to be pretty heavy on Timmy. I think that's where my exposures are largely landing. And I'm okay with that. He's the guy I think, when Luka's not there, that I actually trust at least a little. Maybe it's my bias because I liked him when he was on the Knicks, but I'm going to have a lot of him, a lot of Josh Richardson as well. I did let them play together. I'm a little over the field on Burke, I guess. Not getting as much Brunson as I thought I would. I did make a rule for those two just because I didn't think I'd have time to kind of parse through how much I was getting of them together.
Sure.
I'm getting Brunson less, even though I think I like him better.
So for the small forward spot, I basically have Porter, Durant, Hardaway, LeBron, Oubre, and Derek Jones all in about 25 to 30% of lineups. And then just a smattering of like DFS and Keldon Johnson and those guys. A pretty large fade on Will Barton. We'll see where that ends up.
Yeah, I got to some Will Barton. Where'd the field end up in our last update? Do you have that one?
If we've got another update in the past minute or two, I have not touched it. I didn't want to mess anything up in the final minute before we go to lock, because we are 2 minutes from lock, but it was like 20-something, 25%, something in that neighborhood.
Okay, so I'll be in that general territory.
Yeah.
I realize my placeholder's got Luke in it. Probably should change that.
Yeah, go ahead and take that out. That is not holding the place of anything valuable right now. Guys, we are about to lock. Lineups are uploaded. It always feels good to see 150 entries uploaded successfully. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? I'm ready to just go sit back, hopefully sweat something decent. And I hope that, let's see, Curry, D'Angelo Russell, Will Barton, Maxi Kleber, and Jonas Valanciunas. I'm hoping those guys don't kill me. Those are the bullets I'm trying to dodge.
I think it'll probably break down that just enough of the guys that we both need won't do anything, and we'll both get screwed. But there's a good chance that one of us could have a good night, one of us could have a bad night, because we ended up on some different plays across some of those names.
Most exposed teams, Portland and Chicago. That's where I'm at today.
Most exposed teams. Interesting. Dallas and probably, well, if we're counting stars, got to
Dallas is third for me.
LeBron there. Yeah, I've decent amount of Dallas, decent amount of Chicago, and I got to on the stars end, I got to some LA.
Game. Least exposed teams: Phoenix, Memphis, Minnesota. Oh boy, Minnesota, we locked.
Most of my Minnesota's riding on Dar. The only guy
hate him so much, so he's probably going to go crazy. This feels like the one that really smacks me around. But that is it. We are done. 1 hour and 20 minutes from now, NFL Live Before Lock. Come check it out. 1,500 people still left. We were just shy of 500 likes. If you could hit that thumbs up as you walk out the door, that would be fantastic. It helps us out a ton. It's like going to Taco Bell and ringing the bell if you had good service. You should just do that all the time. Don't dodge the bell. I know that like number is going to hop over 500. Jordan Klein, hit that music. Guys, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'll see you probably tomorrow morning. I assume I'm on the strategy show.
No rest for the week. What did you do, 4 shows today?
3.
3?
Yeah.
No. That is I just updating stuff for this show and trying to get my football entries.